Hello. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to track one for the final session of the day of the event, actually. I'll introduce our speaker in a moment while everyone's filing in, but just after the session, we'll be heading to closing remarks, which will be in this room. So stick around for that. And aside from being a great wrap-up for the whole event, there's going to be an exciting announcement about next year's WordCamp Europe that you're not going to want to miss. So that's going to be cool. Yeah, the whoop was good. So the final session today, it's certainly going to be an interesting one. I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to be hearing from Sebastiaan van der Lans, who is an open source fanatic who founded the Dutch WordPress agency Van Ons. For the last few years, there we go. For the last few years, Sebastiaan has been doing a lot of research and work on WordPress and blockchain, looking towards a fully open source future. He founded WordProof timestamp that allows you to timestamp your WordPress content in the blockchain for free. And if that sounds very jargon heavy, then don't worry. Sebastiaan will be explaining this much more clearly than I ever could. So I'm particularly excited for this and really looking forward to what he has to say. So please give a warm welcome to Sebastiaan van der Lans.
Hello, everybody. How's your conference so far? Wow. Can we have one big round of applause for everyone who organized this? It's amazing, the venue, everything, it's so good, it's so good. And normally we end the conference with something light, and we made a big mistake in the planning. We end with a hard talk. So I have thought of a solution for that. So can everybody please stand up for a moment? Don't be shy. I have a bit of music. It's just a 1-minute fragment, and it starts now. Please dance and make your neighbors dance as well. I could serve myself. Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks. Together forever. I've been a happy single for more than 8 years, and I was totally fine with that. One thing, if I'm ever going to marry, I want to have Rick Astley singing at my wedding. I was 26 by then, and I thought, I will work with the agency 80 to 100 hours a week, and we will find love after when I'm 30. I'm 30 now. 3 years ago, I got a boyfriend, and in September, I asked him to marry me, and he said, yes. So I have a big problem now. I have to get in touch with Rick Astley. We're with 2,500, so please, if you have 1 or 2 handshakes away, let me know, then we get in touch. What was this screenshot about? It's Headspace. Who knows Headspace, the meditation app? It says, ultimately, there's only one thing in life that creates tension, and it's wanting things to be different than they are. And of course, we're with 2,500. I'm a bit nervous, but I don't want to be not here. What I want to be different than it is at this moment is we, as a WordPress community, we have the openness, we have the transparency. How could we operate the world we live in with those principles? And I want to discover that with all of you today. Are you ready for that? Here we go. From WordPress to blockchain, the future will be 100% open source. Something big is happening. As big as the internet as we know it. 25 years of internet, what did it bring us? It's a twofold. Number one, perfect organization of everything we know. Number two, user-friendly packaged everything. With Google, we find information, Facebook and Uber for people, Airbnb booking for a living, and Uber for transport. Can we have a standing ovation for the internet? Thanks. But with the internet, as we know it, there are some problems with data. Even the biggest corporates in the world can't protect our data. Spread of wealth. For Uber, for example, a lot of the revenue, about 25 to 30%, is not going back to the local communities. Censorship, I'll talk on that in a minute. Inclusivity, from the 7 billion people, more than half of all adults don't have any access to financial systems, mortgage, stuff like that. That does something with the amount of opportunity you have in this world. And last one, but not least, content. We have plagiarism, revisionism, fake news, there are some problems. Let's have a look if how we can fix things like this, and especially how could we take back control. Probably we have an idea. I will do a 3-step journey with you today. Number 1, the democratization of publishing. Number 2, democratization of finance. And last but not least, democratization of business. And spoiler alert, we as a WordPress community are in great competitive advantage, becoming 10 to 25 years. I promise you, so stick with me. Who recognizes this sentence? Almost all of us, probably. It's the mission of WordPress. Normally I do this talk in 4 to 5 hours. 90% of it is about how great WordPress and open source is, but we already get that. The best way to describe it is to describe the opposite of the democratization of publishing, and that's censorship. YouTube, being a content creator, has been a job the last years. If you have millions of views, or if you are a special niche, you can make a day job of it. And with the ever-growing amount of content going to YouTube, 300 to 400 hours, every minute is uploaded, it's a hard job to check if the content and the advertisers, if they match. Advertisers make the revenue for YouTube. And what happened, when there's an ad next to content, which advertisers don't like, they say, hey, I stop advertising because it risks my brand. YouTube said, uh-oh, we don't want you, advertisers, to go away, so we make you powerful. With 1 or 2 clicks, you can take down channels. And it's a hard process. There is content which should be censored, of course. Terrorism, there's a whole range of options. But there's a gray area as well. And what happened on a weekly basis the last years, content creators lost their bread and butter just by making their content. That's a great risk. And in fact, as a content creator, I have to trust YouTube for not deleting it. But for me, as a gay guy, I have to trust Facebook to stay inclusive, to not cut me from my friends, from the people I have contact with. And also, I have to, what will happen if I don't have access to my email tomorrow? That's nice and sad at the same time. I have to trust Google in not deleting my access, in not reading my email, not selling my email. But of course, I trust Google because they always said, don't be evil. Sad. It's a great company, but it's hard. They are really powerful. And the opposite of censorship, we all know it, is WordPress. WordPress is a textbook example of how a community could be bigger than any corporate in the world. Some numbers, we all know them. More than 1/3 of the web is WordPress. The number 2, let's give a round of applause for that. Number 2, Joomla, has 3%. We're 10-factor bigger than the number 1, than the number 2. And the number 1 commercial solution is Squarespace. I have laser, dangerous. Squarespace, we're more than 20 times bigger than Squarespace, than the first closed-source solution. And why did it happen? Open source, WordPress was one of the first open source content management systems with what you see is what you get. And when we started our agency 12.5 years ago, my co-founder Robert and I, we are nerds. So of course, we first started to create our own CMS. But after 1 year, we discovered WordPress, and it was the first tool in the world with which you, as a publisher or as an entrepreneur, you didn't need a programmer anymore to publish on the internet. That was mind-blowing by then, with the ease of Microsoft Word. That's how we sold it to the customers. Here's the WordPress ecosystem. We all know about it, but you have the content creators, or you have the creators of WordPress, you have the users of WordPress. And why do we use it? That's number 1, access to the best technology for free, user-friendly, fast innovation, universal, and very important, ownership of data. Why do people create with WordPress? We did, for example, the WP GDPR plugin. We invested around $60,000 euro in it, 1 million downloads. Direct profit, nothing at all. But the indirect profit, it was credibility. It's really hard to find developers. But now it's cool to work at a company who makes software like this. And for the programmers as well, it's kind of having a public resume. They can work wherever they want because they can show that they made this. And also in sales, one of my account managers, if they get the question, hey, GDPR, what do you know about it? Oh, we have a plugin running and protecting tens of millions of inhabitants of Europe. It makes sense. So there's an ecosystem, and we are not here, not for nothing here as volunteers in this audience. It's a great ecosystem. Centralization versus decentralization. What happens when you cut a spider in half? Ah, it dies. What happened when you cut a starfish in half? There are 2 starfishes growing. That's amazing. Check it up on YouTube, if the channel still exists. No, that's the joke. Centralization versus decentralization. It's one needs the other. It's not about good or bad, but it helps a bit for the talk to polarize. We have closed source and open source. So on the left you have the corporate, on the right the community. Closed source versus open source. Centralization, the spider, versus decentralization. A company could say, don't be evil, versus, we will see what comes there, monopoly versus democracy. For shareholders' interest versus all interests aligned, otherwise the community falls apart. And one can censor versus one can't censor. For example, it's hard to hack or whatever Facebook, but how would you hack all tens of millions of WordPress sites in the world? Is that possible? I don't know where to start. I asked a good friend of mine, he's an activist from democratization. What does it mean? And he said, power to the people. I can do what I want. And here's a great quote from Matt Mullenweg in an interview. He said, for every $1 Automatic makes, the WordPress ecosystem makes 20 to 21. That's impressive, right? The next sentence, for every $1 Facebook makes, Facebook makes 99 cents. We as a community are an example of how open source software plus a community could be a market leader. And we are all so proud of that. Let's have a look if we can take those same principles to finance as well. And I'm not talking about Bitcoin or ICOs or any speculation. I'm talking about technology here. Problems in finance, inclusivity, that's number one, I mentioned it already. Possibility to invest. It's hard to buy a house for any middle class in one of the big European cities. Distribution of wealth. And last but not least, hyperinflation. This is an article from the New York Times and it's called Bitcoin Has Saved My Family. Bitcoin is not too popular in Europe and the US, and that's a good thing. We don't have a problem which Bitcoin solves. We have a stable currency. We have inflation rate of 1.5%, 2.5% on a yearly base. What is the inflation rate in Venezuela? Any ideas? It's 3.5%, but not on a yearly base, but on a daily base. 1,000 euros today is at the end of the week 700 and a bit, at the end of the month 300 and a bit, and at the end of the year, I did a calculation and covered my happy face, less than 1 cent. Keeping your money in Venezuela in the local currency is kind of a financial suicide, you could say it like that. Dollars, you can't transfer with dollars because you need a bank account, you need to fly to the US, and nobody could afford that. And holding cash is a punishable event in dollars. So the amount of Bitcoin transactions in Venezuela is so high, it's one of the highest in the world. And actually, open source code and community fixed hyperinflation there. Blockchain, how does it work? There's a 6-minute video. I will share the slides after. We won't watch it now, but all the resources are there. 2 people, can you please stand up? Red? Tristan, can you stand up? We will do a blockchain experiment here. Can you do 3 fingers up? Can you do 1 finger up? Red has 3 Bitcoin. You have 1 Bitcoin. When we do a countdown, 3, 2, 1, you do 2 fingers down and you do 2 fingers up. All right? All together. 3, 2, 1. Bam! That's great. So if Red wants to buy a laptop for 2 Bitcoin from you, what's your name? Helen. Helen. Can Red do that with his 1 Bitcoin? Do we, as nodes in the network, allow that? Can Tristan, with his 3 Bitcoin, do this? Exactly. We were all nodes and miners in the Bitcoin network. Isn't that great? On Bitcoin, every 10 minutes, there's a block with who owns what. That's all it is. It's open source technology doing this. And Bitcoin, as WordPress is, it's an ecosystem. You have on the right, you have the value extractors, the people who secure peer-to-peer value exchange, no middleman, no government, no, low fees, and it's inclusive. Everybody can join. And the business logic is in the protocol. There are 21 million of them, and that's how it works. Bitcoin miners, that's what we all were. How cool is that? They secure the network, and they get a little exchange, or they get a little fee to do so. And every 10 minutes, we found a block reward. That's, yeah, in most cases, shared with all of us. So what happened? The people in blockchain world, they say, basically the internet is fundamentally insecure. Of course, we can use SSL, but that's a band-aid. We still need the PayPals and banks to transfer that money. So for the first time in history, we're able to transfer value from person to person, and we can even program that value. ICOs, some of them were good, a lot of them didn't keep up their promise, but what did it do? A smart contract for less than $100, you can do the whole transaction, the whole thing, the whole crowdsourcing thing. An IPO normally costs you millions. Now you can do it for less than 100 euros. You can program the value there is. That's the thing. For the first time in history, we're able to exchange value from peer to peer, and code and community in this way could decentralize finance as well. Can we have one round of applause for the volunteers in the Bitcoin network? All of us. Okay, step number 3 in our journey together, democratize business, or when you can program value, can you open source business as a whole? Can we make an open source business? And that concept is being called the Decentralized Autonomous Communities or organizations. Who of you has kids? Some of them. And who is a parent? Yeah, the people with kids. And who finds his kids too often on social media? Who finds colleagues too often on social media? Who finds friends too often on social media? Yeah, most of us. Social media is a business of attention. And the scary thing there is that negative content gets more attention than positive. The more negative, fake, or upspiced, the more interaction. And the more interaction is more money. Last year, our attention only on Facebook got sold for 55.8 billion US dollars only. And bluntly stated, our kids, friends, family, and maybe we self, we have to fight against algorithms that are designed to misuse our attention. That resonated a lot with me the first time I heard it. Let's have a look at the business model of companies who are centralized. We have, here's an example of how, for example, Uber works. We have the drivers on the left, we have the riders on the right, and they communicate versus centralized server in the middle, and they're paying fees in both sides. With the left and right switch, the riders, the drivers, Uber tries, hey, how less can we pay them before they run away? And on the other side as well, search, hey, can we let them pay more? How far can we go before they run away? And you could state that the only reasons companies like this exist is because there's ability to get profit. And if there's no profit or no outside on profit, why should they run those companies? So there's kind of a misaligned interest of everybody in around. People, the drivers, and the customers, they don't really care about the success of the company. They just want to get from A to B. What happens if you make Uber or a company like Uber open source? The business logic is in the middle, doing the matching between the value creators, the riders, and the drivers, and the value extractors, the riders, sorry. And all business logic is in open source contracts. And you see, there's no centralized thing in the middle anymore. Everybody participates as a stakeholder in the network, but there's no entity getting the value out of it. It's transparent, auditable, trustworthy, and exclusive. And what happens now is something very interesting. The loop is now closed. They all pay with a token, and the rider needs to buy this token from the driver. So it's a closed loop without any money going out of that loop. And what we see is every stakeholder in the network, they have an interest in promoting it because the value stays in the network. It doesn't go out to stakeholders or governments or whoever. And the question then would be, how would you compete with an Uber where all millions of riders, all millions of drivers are ambassadors, are part of that company, kind of shareholders? That's the same question as how do you compete with a content management system where tens of thousands of people are actively building and tens of millions of people are using it? You simply can't compete with communities. And let's have a look at an example in content. This is SteemIt. SteemIt is an experiment with content. On a daily basis, there are created some SteemIt tokens, and they are distributed to two people. Number one is the content creator, and number two is the people who interact with it, likes, comments, stuff like that. And at the end of the day, the content is, the tokens created are distributed. So 75% for the content creators and 25% for the curators. And if you, for example, for a curation, if you find and like or comment on a topic that will be popular later, that's rewarded higher than someone who likes it later. So the earlier you discover it, the bigger the reward. And on this way, $60 million in value has been distributed to the people in this network. That was the first experiment. And if you want to advertise on the platform, that's possible. You have to buy the token from the content creator or the content, the curators. Is that cool? I think so. It's totally transparent. No one taking value out of the platform without giving it back. And what do the blockchain people say? In 5 years from now, if you don't timestamp your content on the blockchain, you'll be considered a fraud, revisionism. What do you have to hide that you don't want to tell us? And we're working with a team of 4 on an open source tool at the moment, and it's called WordProof, a way to timestamp your content on the blockchain. No middleman and no fees. Let's have a look at a short animation of less than 2 minutes.
Think for a second about your visitor, wandering through the internet, making his way through millions of websites. The choice is literally endless. However, there's only a few websites he accepts information from, let alone does business with. He trusts those websites. But how do you gain your visitors' trust? By timestamping your content on the blockchain. The idea is simple. You publish your content and add a timestamp to the blockchain, creating indisputable proof that you own the content. Let's see what can happen if you don't timestamp your content. You write your article and publish it for the world to see. However, somebody steals your content and profits from it by presenting it as his own. That sucks, doesn't it? If only there would be a way to inarguably prove that you were the creator and owner. You gain additional trust by being transparent. Your visitors can go through your content's different timestamps and now know for sure you didn't tamper with your content. Let's look at the setup. Some say blockchain is difficult, but we've broken it down with a 3-step setup wizard. Follow the 3 steps, and you will be able to timestamp right from your WordPress dashboard. The entire setup takes just 5 minutes. Trust equals ownership and transparency, both for your visitors and you. Start timestamping today. WordProof timestamp. WordProof.io.
That's it. Thank you. Is it cool? Thanks. This is an example of how it's been implemented. So you see, you can choose as a publisher to show a blockchain certificate on the front end. And this is a version you can see, hey, this is the raw content with a link to the blockchain as well, where they can see a hash of the content. So you can show that that is not being tampered with. Does it make sense? I think so. And one of the first questions I often get is, how does timestamping impact my position on Google? And I learned from Joost de Valk, he said, hey, technology is really important, but there's only one thing or strategy that's really important, and that's just Google gives about quality. The only thing is be the best result. That's what we have to do. And in 2012, we asked ourselves, does being responsive affect the search result? And in the end, we even have a separate index of it. It does, because it's better quality result if it fits the device it's being used on. It's better accessibility. In 2017, we asked, hey, 2017, does having HTTPS or SSL affect Google ranking? And its security, of course. We even say it's not secure if it's not on HTTPS. So once again, would timestamping impact my position in Google? It could be. Does it make the relevant question is, does it make the quality of a search result better? And I think that proving your integrity, it should be a human right. And we will fight, we hope to fight together with some of the big plugins to make timestamping a web standard. And it could be very soon. And the question to you is all, do you want to try it? Do you want to start the timestamp movement? If you want to, you can download the slides, everything here on the URL, wordproof.io/start. It's a free thing. We have a premium proposition for the enterprises later. It's open source, there's no middleman, and it's instant, because you can't wait 20 minutes before it's protected. So it's instant. It's open source from WordPress to the blockchain without middleman. And what did we see here? Open source code plus community can make open source companies. And this is one of the first use cases. You can try it without investing. It's just blockchain as pure as it is. And that's actually the 3 steps we made, from publishing to finance to everything else in the world. And we, as a society, we have the opportunity to redesign the world as we know it and take back control of everything with open source. And we, as a WordPress community, we already act, think, work like this. We can do this. We can bring our mindset to everything else in the world. And what can we do? We can switch from a world where we say, don't be evil, to a world where we can provably say, we can't be evil. We're open source. You can check whatever the things are we do. Together forever world. And we can shift from a world where everything I do is in my purpose or my interest to a world where everything I do is in the interest of all of you, and the other way around. And we as WordPress community, we know how to do that, because that's why we're all here with the 2,500 of us. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Sebastiaan. That was entertaining.
Thanks, man.
Do we have any questions? There's microphones in each aisle. Line up behind them, we can get some questions. We've got one in the middle here already.
Hi, my name is Nick. I was wondering what happens if somebody steals your content and you and then modifies it slightly, then the timestamp will be different. Can you detect this?
We make the tool to timestamp it, and the next step in blockchain is that you can tie it to your identity. If you are the original creator, you would of course do that. But if you copied it and you're bad, then and you timestamp it and you tie it to your identity, then it's very visible that you're fraudulent. So it gives you the tools to prove whatever you need to prove. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your question.
Let's go to that side first.
Yeah, again about the thief. So if I'm the thief and I timestamp it before the other guy did,
yeah,
then I'm legit, right?
Yeah. What we did is there's kind of a fair use thing. We work with stamps, word stamps, and everyone, you can always get them for free, 100 of them at least, and every timestamp you make at this moment, you get one timestamp back, but with a limit of 5 a day. So it's hardly, it's quite impossible to timestamp tens of thousands of articles.
You can't spam this way. This way you can't spam, let's say.
Exactly, anti-spam. And so it helps best for new content. First you timestamp, then you publish.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah,
Thanks.
Cool. Let's come to back to the middle here.
Hi. Thank you for Thank you for your talk. One of your points was decentralization, but we aren't there yet. So like WordPress is open source,
Yeah.
but we host things still at Google, at Facebook, and all the toxic platforms.
That are your words.
Yeah.
Yeah, Guy, product number one is timestamping. I have a bigger dream or bigger vision. What if you can use WordPress just as an interface and publish the content on-chain? So we can make cryptographically proven websites which are uncrackable. That's a really dangerous claim. But there will be proof of concept soon, I promise you that, because it's on our roadmap. And let's see what happens then.
Okay, thank you.
But WordProof, we made it to start experimenting with it today. So please try the plugin, because it can be one of the first use cases to show the world that it works.
Okay, cool. Will do, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, man.
Let's go back to the other side over there.
Are there no women wanting to ask a question? Sorry, sir.
Hi, I'm Peter. Which blockchain do you use? Bitcoin blockchain?
No, we don't use Bitcoin because it has 10-minute stamps. And we, as a company, we're chain agnostic. At this moment, we work with the EOSIO software because it has fast block times. And it has no fees for the end user, because if you have to pay every time for it, it's not inclusive, because for a lot of people in the world, $1, for example, is really expensive.
And what about edits? If you edit your content, do you make a new stamp of it?
Yeah, so you can work with, you do restamp it, so you have a timestamp of the new content. And with a premium version, for example, you can go through the revision. So as a journalist, you're not working with a source anymore, not with an article as a source, but you can say, hey, because the source can be changed. You can say, hey, this is my source, but not this article, but a revision of this article, and show that there's not been tampered with. So it's a great, powerful tool to, fake news, stuff like that. Yeah. Make sense?
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Come in the middle here.
Hi. I was wondering, how can we as developers can get started with blockchain?
Nice. We teamed up actually with a party, and they do education in blockchain. So I actually had a slide about it. Yeah, here in the back end, when you download it, we partnered with a party who made a video course with 60 hours of video of blockchain development. So when you sign up for when you install the plugin, you have access to that course for free. Do you want to try that? Probably. Nice.
Let's go back to that side, and then we'll come back to you in the middle.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really cool concept. I think one of the things I'm always worried about with blockchain is the environmental impact.
Yeah.
And the additional processing power really adds up. Can you speak to like how that would work in this instance?
Absolutely. You have.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I think I get your question, so I'll elaborate. You have Bitcoin and Ethereum, they are proof of work. So you need work, and it's a lot of power consumption to do the things. Then you have Ethereum, no, not Ethereum yet, but EOS, for example. They work with proof of stake. So it's a factor 55,000 less amount of power that it consumes. So that's one of the important ranking factors for us to choose EOS at this moment. So it's not hurting the environment to timestamp. Thanks for your concern.
Let's go back to the middle here.
Hi. Your decentralized autonomous business sounds tempting, but somebody still has to develop the tools, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what is your business model at WordProof to ensure you can feed your developers?
We, first of all, two things. The question could be, hey, how could a decentralized autonomous corporation start? That's the same question as, how could WordPress start without an investor? Then, number two, your question was, hey, what's our business model? We, as an agency, work for the biggest publishers, and they, for example, want a service we stamp for you. So they don't. That's one of the. So we're working with stuff like that, just doing sales pitches, listening what they want, and making great products for them. Make sense?
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome, man.
Cool. Let's go over to the side.
First off, thanks much for the talk. It was pretty awesome.
Nice.
So this process, this whole flow can be automated. I mean, is there a possibility as soon as the publisher publishes the post, it is submitted to timestamping automated, or it should be submitted manually?
It depends. For example, the large corporates, it's an extension for the corporate governance. So they want to prove that the marketing director has seen it. Then we can't auto-stamp. But on the other, for other publishers, they say, hey, I want to timestamp everything. I have 70 people working as an editor. So they will probably forget, so we will automate it for them. It differs with every use case. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, actually, I was curious about whether there's a feature in the plugin, if this function could be enabled or disabled, or it's a future function, it's not a core feature now.
At this moment, the automation is not a core feature, but we will launch it in 4 to 5 weeks. But we encourage everybody to just try it, because it should be a community product as well. So every feature request, we're taking it very serious.
Yeah, I see. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, man.
So one more down that side.
Yep.
Hi. I was wondering, what part of the content is part of the timestamp? Is metadata included? If you change the permalinks, is that a new revision?
At this moment, but it will be configurable later, and it will be an important part of the web standard we will write. It's the title, the content, and the moment of publishing.
Okay.
At this moment.
So if most of my page is built with ACF layout, it will not timestamp that content?
That could be your first Git issue, and we will probably react to it.
Okay.
Will you use it?
I'll give it a try.
Thanks,
sure.
man. And there's one thing about the funding. I forgot to mention it.
Yeah.
It's because one of the things, we were able to make that GDPR funding plugin because I have a company with 25 people, and it's a healthy business. But as inclusive as the software is, that exclusive is the funding of open source software. You can only do it when you're privileged enough maybe to do so. Of course, you can volunteer, but if you need to make software, it takes a lot of time and effort and support. And there's one interesting concept. It's called a worker proposal system from the blockchain world. What you can do is, hey, I want to start to make this, and it cost me $2,000 to get it started. Would you, as an open source community, fund my ID? It's on the Telos blockchain, and you can quite easy get money to get you started with an open source project if it has to do anything with blockchain. So that's a great way to make the production of open source software inclusive as well. So in the presentation, there's a link with an article about that worker proposal, that totally inclusive funding as well. Does that sound cool? Yeah.
It does.
Okay. Is there a last question, or I don't know?
Any other questions? Cool. Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, Sebastiaan. That was very informative, very interesting. Thank you.
Man.
It's a little gift to say thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
That's a wrap, basically, except for closing remarks, which is coming up in 20 minutes at 5 p.m. in here. So keep your seats or get back in 20 minutes, and that'll be happening then. Thank you.